The Midnight Dispatch is a fictional podcast inspired by real people and events. Characters have been dramatized for entertainment purposes and artistic exploration. This is not a documentary. It is a work of imagination and may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. What follows are transcriptions from the Private Arctic Journal of Dr. Arthur Conan Doyle, Winter 1880. The journal chronicles Dr. Doyle's personal observations and experiences during his time aboard the SS Hope in the Arctic regions. Composed in Doyle's own hand, the entries offer a rare and intimate glimpse into the daily life, challenges, and reflections of the author during this formative expedition. The journal remains a valuable historical artifact, capturing not only the harsh realities of Arctic exploration in the late 19th century, but also Doyle's evolving perspective as a writer and observer of the natural world. Presented here in its original form, the entries have been preserved without alteration to maintain the authenticity of the record. February 12, 1880, aboard the SS Hope.
I took my leave of Peterhead beneath a vault of clear northern sky, the air sharp with salt and promise. With scarcely a fortnight's notice, I set aside my medical studies, temporarily, I assured myself, for the sake of adventure. Thus I embarked aboard the SS Hope, bound for the Arctic, my heart brimming with a curious blend of youthful certainty and frostbitten anticipation. The Hope is a sturdy, modern vessel, 3 masts proud against the northern sky, her sails taut with purpose. She carries an auxiliary steam engine as well, a noisy, iron-hearted contraption that seems to resent the poetry of wind. Yet together, canvas and coal drive us steadily into the ice. Captain Gray, ever the embodiment of maritime restraint, has granted me the honorary title of ship's surgeon. It is a kindness more than a necessity. The crew, seasoned and stoic, are men of few words and fewer complaints. Their ailments are treated with pipe smoke and stubborn silence, and they wear their bruises like old medals. I suspect my true role lies somewhere between observer and distraction. A young man with a notebook, more curious than useful. It is customary aboard Greenland whalers for the captain and crew to remain entirely separate, save for the issuing of orders and the briefings of harpooners and senior officers. The social divide is as firm as the hull that carries us. Captains often take a companion for the 7-month voyage, someone to share the long stretches of quiet and the occasional storm of thoughts. I am fortunate enough to be that companion. Though I am young and untested, I suspect the captain sees in me a curiosity rather than a liability. I intend to earn that trust and to chronicle this journey with the care it deserves. We are bound north, toward whaling grounds and ancient snow. I brought nothing but a coat, a compass, and a notebook I most likely will not fill. The first night, the sea was a mirror, reflecting stars so vividly it felt as though we sailed through the heavens. The crew, hardened men of few words, shared stories in hushed tones, their voices carrying the weight of past voyages. Gray remained aloof, his eyes fixed on the horizon.
February 16th, the frozen threshold.
By the third day, frost had claimed the rigging, turning ropes into brittle sculptures. The air grew sharper, each breath a reminder of the unforgiving cold. I began to notice the silence, not the absence of sound, but a presence in itself, heavy and watchful. The sky lay flat and leaden, as though the heavens themselves held their breath. The wind whispered on loop, a low susurration, each lick of air repeating the last, an incantation with no end. What surprised me most about the Arctic regions was the rapidity with which you reach them. I had never realized that they lie at our very door. I think that we were only 4 days out of Shetland when we were among the drift ice. Captain Gray confided in me one evening, his voice barely above a whisper. He spoke of a legend, a place where the ice never melts, where time stands still. He called it the Frozen Sanctum. His words lingered, filling the cabin with an unspoken dread. I started to write more, filling pages with observations, questions, and fragments of thought. The notebook I never meant to fill began to feel like a lifeline, a tether to sanity in the vast, unyielding expanse of the Arctic. And so, we sailed on, bound north, toward whaling grounds and ancient snow, and perhaps toward something far older and far colder than we could ever imagine.
February 19th, at sea.
Gray walked the deck tonight, hands tucked into the pockets of his wool coat, his shoulders rigid against the cold. He paused at the rail, studying the horizon, where ice met sky in a seamless, blanched lie. "If the stars move wrong," he said, without looking back, "don't ask them why." His voice carried the weight of prophecy. I laughed then, a brittle thing, cracked by cold and disbelief. I expected some concession, a jest, or an explanation. But Gray gave me none. He simply turned away, leaving his words to hang like the icicles that dangled above us. The ice groaned beneath us, a sound deep as marrow, as if the sea resented our intrusion. Each shudder of the hull echoed through my bones. On deck, the crew's usual discipline faltered. One man scraped frost from his beard, another stared into the gloom with unseeing eyes. Their silence spoke volumes. Below, in the cramped cabin, the lantern flickered, casting quivering shadows over the notebooks piled on the table. I tried to write Gray's words, but the ink froze against the page. My breath came in shards, each exhale a cloud that drifted like phantom fingertips. I pressed my palm to the window, the glass slick with condensation. Beyond it, shapes shifted in the ice, a fractured cathedral of white and blue, arches and spires carved by long-dead winds. I could almost see movement there, a figure stepping between the floes, watching. When I looked back to the map Gray left in the galley, my heart sank. The dot he'd marked lay beyond every known chart, at the very edge of exploration. Beneath it, in his precise hand, he'd scrawled one word: follow. My notebook remained stubbornly blank. Gray's words held me captive. If the stars move wrong, don't ask them why. I felt their gaze, those indifferent points of light, tracking something beyond human reckoning. Tonight, the SS Hope sails not toward whaling grounds, but into a silence older than man. I am enthusiastic for the hunt as we approach our destination.
February 24th, Ice and Echoes.
The seals arrived today. Tens of thousands. Glossy black eyes, fur like wet velvet, and that sound, like a cough drowned in sorrow. What I envisioned as an exciting hunt turned out to be no hunt at all. It was merely a slaughter, spiked clubs, ropes, rifles, The men moved with brutal rhythm. Blood bloomed across the ice, shocking red against spectral white. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood, mingling with the briny scent of the sea. The cries of the seals, once mournful, grew faint as the slaughter continued, replaced by the harsh commands of the hunters and the dull thud of clubs meeting flesh. They look a sort of cross between a lamb and a gigantic slug. The mothers are shot, and the little ones have their brains knocked out with spiked clubs. It is brutal work, though not more brutal than that which goes on to supply every dinner table in the country. And yet, those glaring crimson pools upon the dazzling white of the ice fields, under the peaceful silence of the Arctic sky, did seem a horrible intrusion. But an inexorable demand creates an inexorable supply, and the seals, by their death, help to give a living to the long line of seamen, dockers, tanners, curers, tryers, chandlers, leather merchants and oil sellers who stand between this annual butchery on the one hand and the exquisite with his soft leather boots, or the savant using a delicate oil for his philosophical instruments on the other. Gray stood apart from the chaos, his face a mask of inscrutable calm. He watched the scene with an intensity that made my skin crawl, as though he were searching for something amidst the carnage. I couldn't look away. My pencil moved of its own accord, capturing the horror in stark lines and shadows. Each stroke felt like a betrayal, a complicit act in the violence unfolding before me. When the hunt finally ended, the ice was littered with bodies, their dark forms stark against the endless white. The men laughed and joked as they hauled their spoils back to the ship, their voices jarring against the silence that followed. Gray approached me then, his boots crunching on the blood-streaked ice. He said nothing, but his eyes held a question I couldn't answer. I closed my notebook, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. In that moment, surrounded by blood, laughter, and the machinery of profit, Gray's unspoken question was a reckoning. Not just about the seal hunt, but about the entire machinery of industrial civilization, the cost of comfort, the price of advancement, and the moral erosion that comes with turning life into ledger entries.
March 5th. Obsidian and Whispers.
I asked Gray about the formations near the ridge I spotted a few days before. Strange protrusions. Shards, I thought. Jagged obsidian streaked with green. He said they weren't in our charts. Then he muttered, barely audible, "It stirs." He would say no more. That night I dreamt of snow falling upward. The formations haunted me. Their jagged edges seemed to claw at the sky, defying the natural order. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were alive, breathing in the cold air, waiting. Gray's words echoed in my mind, their cryptic weight pressing down on me. It stirs. What was it? The question gnawed at me, a splinter lodged deep in my thoughts. I spent hours sketching the formations, trying to capture their unsettling beauty. The green streaks shimmered like trapped light, casting eerie reflections on the ice. The more I drew, the more I felt a connection to them, as if they were revealing secrets meant only for me. The crew avoided the ridge, their unease palpable. Even the most hardened among them refused to look directly at the formations, muttering prayers under their breath. Gray's behavior grew more erratic. He spent long hours in the galley, poring over maps and scribbling notes. His silence was a void, pulling us all into its depths. That night, as I lay in my bunk, the dream returned. Snow falling upward, defying gravity, swirling in patterns that felt deliberate, purposeful. I woke with a start, my heart racing. The image burned into my mind. And still, we sailed on, the ridges fading into the distance, but their presence lingering like shadows in my thoughts.
March 8th. The Descent.
At first light, I disembarked from the Hope, rope coiled over my shoulder and lamp in hand. The air was brittle with cold, the kind that bites through wool and bone alike. A fissure had opened near the southern shelf, too precise, too clean to be the work of mere ice and pressure. It drew me in with the quiet insistence of a riddle. For days now, I have glimpsed those black, jagged spires on the horizon, always distant, always watching. Today, I resolved to approach. I only regret not having done so sooner. There is something in this landscape that resists familiarity. Even the silence here feels like a deliberate mystery beckoning me to come and explore. I descended 30 feet. The rope held. My lamp flickered once, then steadied. Down inside the cavern, the darkness carved into geometry. The walls glistened, not with ice or rock, but obsidian. The black glass pulsated faintly, although I could not tell if it was shimmering from the sunlight or from something deeper beneath the surface. My descent was slow, each step deliberate, the crunch of my boots against the shards echoing in the confined space. The air grew colder, biting at my exposed skin, yet the obsidian walls seemed to radiate a faint warmth. I paused to examine the carvings etched into the surface. Symbols unfamiliar, yet oddly resonant, as though they whispered secrets I had always known, but never understood. My fingers traced the grooves, feeling the pulse of the stone beneath. The lamp flickered again, casting fleeting shadows. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, a figure, perhaps, or a trick of the light. My heart raced, but I pressed on, driven by a curiosity that outweighed my fear. At the bottom of the fissure, the geometry gave way to a cavern, vast and silent, its ceiling lost in darkness. The obsidian here was different, darker, denser, its surface marred by cracks that glowed faintly green. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of earth and something else, something ancient and unknown. At the end of the corridor, I found a room unlike anything I had ever seen. It was spherical, its walls smooth and warm to the touch, as though the cold of the Arctic had been banished entirely. The air was still, heavy, with a silence that felt alive. No snow drifted here. No wind howled. It was as if the room existed outside the natural world. At the heart of the cavern rose an altar, not constructed, but coaxed from the ice itself, etched with spiraling glyphs that shimmered faintly. Encircling it stood frozen figures, not carved, not sculpted, but preserved. Their forms were unmistakably human, yet contorted in ways no anatomy should allow. Limbs twisted inward, torsos arched unnaturally, and faces locked in expressions of terminal horror. One appeared mid-turn, its fingers clawing at the ice as if trying to flee. Another knelt, hands clasped as if mid-prayer. Still another reached skyward, mouth agape as though caught in an eternal scream. But it was the eyes, those voids of frozen black, that suggested they were not representations, but remnants, as though whatever force governed this place had not sculpted these beings, but claimed them. The ice held them like a collector's cabinet holds curiosities, preserved not out of mercy, but possession. I approached the altar slowly, each step muted by the frost underfoot. As I drew near, the air thickened. The temperature did not rise, but the space felt heavier, laden with expectancy. Only then did I see it, nestled in a shallow hollow at the altar's center, not placed, but embedded. A stone, brilliant and green, its surface alive with a light that danced in rhythm with something ancient. Shadows lengthened around me, coiling upward like silent smoke. The frozen forms encircling the chamber seemed to loom closer, their poses twisted in pain or reverence, or perhaps both. Ice clung to them like skin, preserving expressions of horror and surrender. This presence, this absolute darkness, seemed to grow stronger the longer the emerald captivated my gaze. I stepped to the edge of the altar, breath shallow, heart unsteady. It pulsed in its cradle, demanding my touch. I extended a hand, and just before my fingers met it, something shifted. Not in the room, but within me. A sense of recognition, of inevitability. The moment I touched it, the cavern responded. A low vibration stirred beneath my feet, a sound without sound, more felt than heard. My hand trembled as I slipped my fingers beneath the stone, testing the give of the ancient altar. It resisted only for a heartbeat, then surrendered with a sickening ease. I pried it loose, and it came free as if unlatched from something that never truly wanted to let go. The moment it left the altar, the light in the cavern dimmed, but not because the stone had ceased to glow. No, the shadows retreated into silence, drawn inward toward me, drawn toward it. The walls seemed to shudder, the symbols along the ice flaring and then vanishing, as though they had fulfilled their purpose. I clutched the emerald to my chest. It was warm, too warm. It pulsed, not like a gem, but like a heart deprived of a body. And I knew, as surely as I had ever known anything, that whatever dwelled within it had noticed me. Not just now, but long before. Behind me something cracked, not loudly, but with the brittle sound of a joint forced the wrong way. I didn't turn. I fled the chamber quickly and have little memory of the trek across the ice that brought me back to the ship.
March 9th. The Emerald's Return.
I awoke in my bunk, the emerald clutched in my hand. Its surface was cool now, its light dimmed, but its presence was undeniable. The ship was as I had left it. Silent, empty, a ghost of its former self. But something had changed. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I placed the emerald in my coat pocket, its weight a constant reminder of what had transpired. As I moved through the ship, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the shadows were deeper and more alive than they should be. The captain and crew were still present, their movements mechanical, their voices hollow. They spoke in monotones, their words devoid of emotion, as if the emerald's presence had drained them of their humanity. That night, more dreams. I saw girls carrying flowers, their faces serene yet haunting. They moved in unison, their steps deliberate, their eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. The flowers they carried were unlike any I had ever seen, vivid, otherworldly, their petals shimmering with an unnatural light. Flashes of a man filled my mind, his face contorted in anguish, his voice a distant echo. The images were disjointed, fragmented, yet they carried a weight that pressed down on me, suffocating and inescapable. I woke in a cold sweat, the emerald glowing faintly on the table beside me. Its light pulsed in time with my racing heartbeat, a silent reminder of its power and the hold it had over me. The days that followed were a blur of unease and foreboding. The dreams continued, each one more vivid and unsettling than the last. The girls with the flowers, the man's tortured visage, the emerald's relentless presence, they all wove together into a tapestry of dread that I couldn't escape.
March 13th. A dream apart from the others.
Days later, I had a particularly disturbing dream, at least one that was apart from the others. I dreamt I was seated at my desk, pen in hand. One whispered to be cursed. My fingers moved without command, scrawling strange symbols and fragmented letters across the page. I watched, helpless, as the ink flowed in patterns I did not recognize, my mind adrift in a fog of detachment. It was not I who was writing, but something else, something working through me. I was no author, no master of thought, but a vessel. The pen guided my hand with eerie precision, as though it had long waited for a willing host. A single word, harbinger, stood before me in jagged script surrounded by magic symbols I did not recognize, each letter etched with urgency and dread. My heart thundered as I awoke, thinking for sure I had written the note the night before, yet no notes or cursed pens were in my possession, only the emerald. And still, we sailed on.
April 9th. The Madness of McBride.
In the weeks that followed, a strangeness seemed to settle over the Hope. The crew, once gruff but good-humored, grew increasingly reserved. Conversations dwindled to murmurs, and laughter, once a nightly companion, vanished altogether. Many of the men began to behave erratically, staring too long at the ice, speaking in half-thoughts, or waking from sleep with shouts they could not explain. My visits with Captain Grey became infrequent. When we did speak, I found him changed, his eyes sunken, his voice low and uncertain. He spoke in fragments, as though his thoughts were slipping through cracks he could no longer seal. There was a tremor in his hand I had not noticed before. One crewman in particular, a harpooner named McBride, began to worry me. He took to pacing the deck at odd hours, muttering to himself in a dialect I could not place. Once I found him standing at the bow, staring into the dark water, whispering as if in conversation with something beneath the ice. When I called his name, he turned slowly, his eyes wide and unblinking, and said only, "It's listening." What began as idle muttering and sleepless pacing in McBride has grown into something far more unsettling. 2 nights ago, I found him in the hold, crouched beside the supply crates, whispering to a bundle of rope as though it might answer him. When I checked on him, he didn't startle. He simply turned, smiled faintly, and said, "It's almost ready." I asked what he meant, but he only laughed, a dry, hollow sound that did not belong to the man I had come to know. He's taken to sketching in charcoal on the walls of his berth, spirals, jagged shapes, and symbols I cannot decipher. I attempted to speak with him again yesterday, but he seemed distracted, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if watching something approach. The crew avoids him now. Even the boatswain, a man not easily shaken, confessed to me that McBride speaks in his sleep, sometimes in languages no one aboard recognizes. One sailor swears he heard McBride reciting coordinates, though none match any known chart. I cannot help but wonder, is this merely the toll of a long voyage, the creeping madness of isolation and cold? Or is it something more? The emerald, ever present in my thoughts, seems to hum with quiet significance. McBride's condition continues to deteriorate. He no longer eats with the others, preferring instead to sit alone near the stern, eyes fixed on the ice as though awaiting some silent signal. Yesterday, I found him tracing symbols into the frost on the deck, shapes disturbingly similar to those I've seen before, though I cannot say where. When I asked what he was drawing, he looked up and said, "You've seen it too, haven't you?" I said nothing. He smiled. "I have told no one, not even the captain, that I found the emerald. I wrapped it in oilcloth and concealed it beneath the floorboards of my cabin. I told myself it was for safekeeping, but I cannot deny the pull it exerts. At night, I sometimes wake to find myself staring at the spot where it lies hidden, as if listening for something. Is it the long voyage that frays our minds, the cold, the isolation? Or is it the emerald, some ancient relic that carries with it more than just the weight of stone? I cannot say. But McBride's eyes follow me now, and I fear he knows more than he lets on. There are moments when I feel I am not alone in my thoughts, that something else is thinking through me. I have begun to wonder if the cold alone is to blame, or if something else has taken hold of us out here in this vast and silent white.
April 15th. A Vanishing.
This morning, McBride was gone. His bunk lay undisturbed, his coat still hanging from its peg, boots neatly placed beneath the hammock, as if he had simply stepped out for air and never returned. No one saw him leave. No one heard a sound. The crew gathered on deck, their faces drawn and pale, eyes darting toward the ice as though it might offer an answer. Captain Gray ordered a search party at once. We fanned out across the surrounding floes, calling his name into the wind. Only silence answered, thick, oppressive, and absolute. We found no tracks, no broken ice, no sign of struggle, just the endless white, unmarked and indifferent. One of the younger deckhands, Ellis, swore he saw McBride the night before, standing at the edge of the ship, staring out toward the horizon. He looked calm, Ellis said, like he was waiting for something. Another man claimed he heard a low humming in the night, like a voice beneath the ice. No one spoke after that. The captain has grown more withdrawn. He did not join the search. When I asked if he thought McBride might have fallen, he only muttered, "Some things don't fall. They're taken." Whether he spoke of the man or his own mind, I can't be sure. I have not dared to check beneath the floorboards. The emerald remains hidden, but I feel it more acutely now, like a pulse beneath the planks. I cannot help but wonder if McBride was drawn to it, or if it called him. We have resumed our course northward, but the mood aboard the Hope has shifted. The men speak in hushed tones. They avoid the lower decks, and at night I find myself listening, not for McBride's return, but for whatever might come in his place.
Though the final entry in Doyle's Arctic Journal ends in silence, the leather-bound volume does not. There are more pages, some filled, others left ominously blank, as if awaiting a hand not yet guided. Yet, as Oscar Wilde and Harry Houdini sit across from one another in the flickering gaslight of a London study, the journal lies open between them. Wilde's fingers rest lightly on the page, his expression unreadable. Houdini closes the cover with quiet finality. Whatever truths the ice held, they have found what they came for. The Emerald story is not over, but for now they know enough.
Good evening, listeners. Welcome to the Midnight Dispatch. I'm your host, Joe, and this has been Episode 9, Ice and Blood, the second and final flashback episode in the series. This was probably my favorite one to not only write, but also to produce. I love the journal entries, the dreams of the future, and the slow unraveling madness. And, of course, finally revealing what Arthur scribbled in his trance way back in Episode 2, The Cursed Pen. So how much of this episode is fact? How much did I fictionalize? Well, let's talk about it. Much of this episode draws directly from Arthur Conan Doyle's actual Arctic journal written during his voyage aboard the SS Hope in 1880. Doyle was a young medical student when he joined Captain David Gray's whaling expedition out of Peterhead. His role as ship's surgeon was more honorary than practical, but the experience profoundly shaped his imagination. The journal records vivid details of life aboard a whaling ship, the silence of the ice, the brutality of the seal hunt, and Doyle's conflicted feelings about industrial civilization's reliance on such violence. These authentic passages, his description of the crew, the slaughter of seals, and the eerie silence of the Arctic, anchor the episode in historical reality. They remind us that Doyle was not yet the creator of Sherlock Holmes, but a young man grappling with the moral and existential weight of exploration. Some interesting themes in this episode. You have industrial violence versus natural silence. Doyle's horror at the seal hunt captures the tension between human progress and the cost of exploitation. The episode frames this as a reckoning not just for the Arctic, but for civilization itself. The theme of isolation and madness. The Arctic silence becomes a metaphor for psychological unraveling. Crew members like McBride embody the thin line between endurance and collapse. Legacy and myth-making. Doyle's notebook, initially meant as a casual record, becomes a lifeline and vessel for myth. The act of writing itself is portrayed as both preservation and possession. And the theme of the unknown. Captain Gray's cryptic warnings, "If the stars move wrong, don't ask them why," highlight the theme of cosmic indifference, forces older and colder than human comprehension. So this episode is another one steeped in Lovecraftian inspiration. While Doyle's real journal is factual, the episode layers in Lovecraftian motifs. You have the obsidian spires and green glowing emerald. Those evoke alien geometries and artifacts beyond human reckoning. The frozen figures around the altar recall Lovecraft's fascination with bodies preserved in unnatural states, caught between worship and horror. The dreams of snow falling upward and girls carrying flowers with otherworldly light echo Lovecraft's dream logic and surreal imagery. McBride's descent into madness, scribbling symbols, whispering to unseen forces, mirrors the archetypal doomed witness of cosmic horror. Importantly, the episode doesn't just imitate Lovecraft, it reflects his themes through Doyle's authentic voice, creating a hybrid of historical realism and mythic dread. The SS Hope was a real vessel, and Captain David Gray was a respected whaling captain. Doyle's participation in the voyage is well documented. The seal hunt passages are historically accurate and remain some of the most visceral parts of Doyle's journal. The invented elements, the emerald, the cavern, McBride's disappearance, are carefully interwoven with fact, blurring the line between history and myth. The episode's title, Ice and Blood, captures this duality, the stark beauty of the Arctic and the violence that sustains human industry. The journal's final silence, paired with Wilde and Houdini's closing gesture, suggests that history itself is a haunted text, always awaiting the next hand to inscribe meaning. This episode works because it grounds cosmic horror in real history. Doyle's authentic Arctic journal provides the factual skeleton, while the Lovecraftian editions flesh it out into something mythic, uncanny, and deeply unsettling. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode as much as I have. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey and supporting the show. If you want more, don't forget to check out patreon.com/themidnightdispatch for ad-free episodes, early access to new episodes. Also, soon I'll be announcing 3 full-length bonus episodes that will only be available to Patreon members. If you'd like to write the show, please email me at themidnightdispatch@gmail.com. I'd love to hear what you think so far. Also, please drop the show a positive review on Spotify or Apple iTunes. It only takes a quick minute, and it really helps get the word out. So that does it for this week. I hope to see you here next week, as we are now on the fast track to the end with only 3 more episodes to go. Until then, good night, everyone.